Good morning and welcome to this edition of San Diego People. I'm Brandy Williams. Honoring those who go above and beyond in the face of violence crime. That's the goal of the San Diego County District Attorney's Citizen of Courage Awards. This month, several recipients were honored for their bravery at the Westin Horton Plaza Hotel. All of them were recognized for showing a tremendous amount of strength in violent situations. San Diego County District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis says they are not just award winners, they are all heroes.
That means that the person has shown extraordinary courage. Being a victim, most times it's random, but even having to go through the process and actually testify against the person that's done that to you or done that to a loved one, they're heroes. They're heroes, and it takes a tremendous amount of courage.
Today, we will be speaking to some of the award winners, but first, we're going to talk to some of the prosecutors on what a citizen of courage really means. So joining us today, Deputy DA Shawn Tafreshi and Deputy DA Tracy Pryor. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the Citizen of Courage Award first and foremost. What does it mean to the both of you?
This is a phenomenal event that has been going on for 26 years in the District Attorney's Office, started by the elected District Attorney back then, Ed Miller, and it really recognizes people for their bravery through a criminal act, like a victimization. And to me, it just, as a prosecutor, reminds us of why we do what we do every day.
Absolutely.
People who are victimized and have to go through the difficult process of seeing the case go through to trial oftentimes don't receive the recognition that they deserve. The courage to sit there in court and to face your attacker is something that is very difficult, and for us to actually recognize that an event once a year that we do is something special.
I want to break down both of your specialties now. Tracy, you focus on domestic violence.
Yes.
A lot of domestic violence cases all over the country, a lot here in San Diego, most of them behind closed doors, meaning that people don't ever talk about it.
Yes.
Statistically, 1 in 3 women will experience some sort of domestic violence in their lifetime. How big of a problem is this? What are you seeing? And how many women need to start speaking up and talking about it more?
It's prevalent, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's one of the most underreported crimes as well. So we at the District Attorney's Office, we only see the ones that the victim had the courage, number one, to pick up the phone and actually report. That's an easier said than done scenario. And then it has to go through the entire criminal justice system before it lands on our desk. I think the number one thing that people, victims of domestic violence, can do is not be silent. Have the courage to tell a friend, tell somebody that they trust, and try to have the bravery to know that they can get out. San Diego has an amazing amount of resources that are there to help survivors of domestic violence get the help that they need and get safe.
How do they find that courage, though? I have family members who are and were victims of domestic violence. It's very hard to escape it when you're in certain situations and you feel an inch big and that you have no other options out there. So if there's women watching right now living here in San Diego who are in those circumstances, what advice do you give to them?
I would just say to try your best to find whatever that is, power that you have within you, to branch out and try to tell. It is something that you have to think about. It's something that can be strategic at times, whether it's have a safety plan, call up the Family Justice Center or the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Try to speak with someone in confidence to get that courage up and get a plan for yourself. We don't want to minimize how very, very difficult this is to live within that relationship, but then also try to get out of it. Sure. But we do want survivors and victims to know that there is help out there for them. And a 911 call is a microphone to help.
And find some security in knowing you're not the only one.
They're not alone.
Yeah, there's a lot of women, unfortunately, who are victims of domestic violence, like I said, here and all over the country. Shawn, I want to turn to you right now because your focus is gang-related crimes, right?
Correct.
I would think a lot of people don't look at America's finest city as being, you know, having gang-related crimes here. How many do you see?
We have plenty of gang violence all the way from South Bay to North County, and the one thing about gang crime is that it never goes away. There might be slight dips, there might be increases, but usually it takes one event. One person will be shot or killed, and that'll spark what'll end up being a war, a back and forth where it just doesn't stop. And retribution, retaliation goes on and on and on until finally someone does something about it.
What do you see the most of? Gang members returning from confinement, or just gang-on-gang crimes? I mean, what's the most popular, so to say, here in San Diego?
Well, the most common is gang members victimizing gang members, and they do that over turf, over land, essentially. But also that spills over into innocent people being hurt. Gang members do not confine their violence to other gang members. It spills over to the public. I've done cases where innocent bystanders have been shot and killed, and that is something that people don't quite understand, that it's not within gang circles. People, common citizens who just go to pump some gas, can become victims of gang violence.
Wow, I'm sure that the both of you have met all sorts of people working as deputy DAs. Shawn, let's stick with you. I want you to tell me about Isabel, who you nominated for a Citizen of Courage Award.
Isabel is a remarkably courageous woman. She and her brother went to get some food in June of 2007 in Lemon Grove. It was a normal day, a day with family, that they had a great time. They had just gotten a dog and they were playing in the park. And what Isabel didn't know was that gang members were watching her house. Gang members that wanted to retaliate and just get some sense of revenge against somebody. And it happened to be her brother, who had just himself was a part of a gang. He was not somebody that was responsible for the reasons why these gang members were retaliating, but he was just a target of opportunity. And Isabel went into a car that she owned. She drove her brother to get some food, and they were being followed. And when she stopped at an intersection in Lemon Grove in broad daylight, one of those gang members came out armed with a high-caliber semi-automatic weapon, and he point-blank fired into the open passenger window where her brother was seated, shooting her brother and also shooting Isabel in the process. Towards the very end of it, that shooter raised the gun to actually shoot Isabel in the head and kill her. Fortunately, he ran out of ammunition. He wasn't able to do it. She was able to survive her gunshot wounds. She stayed the course. She was there in court when she needed to be, and when she was called upon, she didn't run the other way. And ultimately, after several years of work, we were able to get a good result. And the person who shot and killed her brother and shot her was held responsible for his crime.
Wow, someone was watching over her that day. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible story. And tell me about Dayna.
Dayna Herroz is a woman who, just to me, epitomizes what a courageous heroine is. 10 years ago, she was thrust into the unthinkable when her beloved daughter and her 10-month-old grandson were brutally murdered. When I say brutally murdered, the daughter was strangled with a hair straightening iron cord, and the baby, 10-month-old baby Dean, was hung by another electrical cord to his crib. And we had seasoned homicide detectives who had worked homicide collectively for 100 years say that that was one of the most brutal crime scenes they had ever attended, seeing a young child hung on its bed. And Dayna is grandmother of this baby and mother of Tori, the young woman who was murdered. And at that moment in time began a journey that was filled with anger, obviously, and rage, obviously, just confusion. And what she did over the next 10 years, to me, was the most remarkable. I met her at a time when she was at her most broken, in a lobby at the Hall of Justice in the District Attorney's office. And I mean, I just sat there with her, obviously never having begun to walk a moment in her shoes, but she said to me, I don't know what to do now. There's no textbook that helps me understand what to do. But then later in the conversation, she said, I'm going to write that book someday. And sure enough, she did. She became a contributing writer to an actual murder survivor's handbook. But not only that, just in the next 10 years, she became a victim advocate and was awarded a Victim Advocate of the Year award. She worked with Crime Stoppers. She dedicated herself to survivors of violent loss group therapy sessions. She joined organizations that could turn around her pain to help others so that they might be able to have some empowerment in going through an unthinkable process. Every day with what she did, she would honor Tori and Dean with grace and with dignity. And for that, I believe that that's so courageous in my mind, and was proud to nominate her for this award.
And we're going to learn more about that handbook in just a few moments, so you folks stay with us. Still ahead, we talked to one of the citizens of Courageous Awards, and Isabel Enriquez, is that how you say her last name? I want to pronounce it right, who turned her life around after witnessing her brother being killed in a gang-related shooting. We just heard that story. We're going to learn more about it when San Diego People returns. Welcome back to San Diego People. Today we are talking to some of the award recipients of Citizens of Courage. One of them is Isabel Gonzalez. She was with her brother when, that's not right. You have the wrong name in there. And welcome back to San Diego People. Today we are talking to some of the award recipients of Citizens of Courage. One of them is Isabel Enriquez. She was with her brother when he was killed in a gang-related shooting in Lemon Grove in 2007. The case went cold, but when police finally found his killer using DNA evidence, she was brave enough to face him in court and later focus her attention on fighting crimes similar to this one. So joining us right now to talk about this case is Isabel and Deputy DA Shawn. Tafreshi, thank you so much for joining us. Unbelievable. I mean, this story is absolutely incredible. If you're comfortable with it, will you relive that day and share your story?
I remember my brother and I were going to go out to dinner, and I was driving. My brother was in the passenger side, and I just drove off.
Just a normal day, broad
Just a
daylight.
normal day.
You and your brother close?
Yes, very close. And probably like 2 or 3 lights away from where we lived, someone was following us behind my car, and a gentleman walks to my brother's window and just starts shooting at him in the middle of the daylight, the middle of a stoplight. No words, no reason, nothing. Just starts shooting at my brother and I.
You got hit with a couple of bullets.
Yes.
Right? You were struck. Shawn shared the story with us last segment that he had raised the gun to fire at you, and thankfully, at your head, he was out of bullets.
Yes.
You were able to drive away at that point.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine. What were you feeling at that moment? I mean, this had just happened, but you still had the courage to hit the gas and drive away.
I was nervous. I was scared.
Sure.
I just needed to leave. I wanted to get out of that place. I was scared they might come back again. I was shot. I tried as much as I could to get strength to get out of that place and try to go somewhere safe, where there was people, where there was someone that could help me, that could help my brother and me. And I don't know how I did it. I just remember I just drove.
Yeah.
Kept on driving and driving until I saw some shopping centers, and that's where I parked and just waited for the ambulance and paramedics to come and help my brother and I.
Wow. But since then, you've helped so many other people. You've lived to share your story. You've faced this man in court. I mean, you found courage in so many aspects of your life, and you're here to share your story once again. What have you learned from all of this? What have you put together in a message that you want to share with everyone out there?
Don't give up. It's hard. It's a long road. You have to wait a long time sometimes to get answers. And sometimes people give up. And I don't let no one make you give up or lose hope in any kind of way. And, you know, you can get back up someday, somehow. It's going to hurt. You're going to go through a lot, but you'll go through it.
I'd imagine you have a lot of hurt.
Yes.
A lot of anger.
Yes.
How do you push that aside to persevere, to keep moving forward? How have you done it?
I learned to forgive. It took me a long time for me to overcome that because I had a lot of anger in my heart. And I think that was the only reason why I still keep going forward, be able to learn how to forgive, let go, and so I can have peace.
And continue being courageous.
Yes.
And now you're the recipient of this award.
Yes,
What
I
does
am.
that mean to you?
I was very happy. I was surprised. I didn't expect it. It means a lot to me. And it means a lot because it has to do with my brother, and in some way, somehow, I remember him, and not only me, but you know, the district attorneys and everyone else that's watching the case and the show, and that means a lot.
Now, Shawn, you've been a deputy DA for how long?
About 10 years.
10 years. So you've met a lot of people. You've seen a lot of cases. When this came about to nominate someone, why Isabel?
Well, Isabel was 19 at the time. She was in school, and she actually, I can tell you better than I can, but she was embarking, ironically, in a career in criminal investigations, something that she was interested in. And she had a small child, and the way the day unfolded was so unexpected to her, is that yes, she had a brother who had been part of gangs, but she was not a part of gangs. And when we talk about how gang crime sometimes spills over and affects the innocent, this is an example of that. Absolutely innocent person who was at the wrong place at the wrong time when this gang violence was inflicted upon her. And for somebody who went through that, who had to relearn how to walk again, and basic things, and to persevere through all that, and to get her life to where she could actually forgive somebody like that, somebody that did that to her brother and to her, that's rare. And it's something that I admire in her greatly.
I'm just curious. Gang members oftentimes, they're very violent, they're pretty scary. When they're gang-related crimes, Is it more difficult? Like I said at the beginning of this segment, the case went cold. Explain to us what that means and the difficulties that you may face when it's gang-related as opposed to just a regular homicide or a domestic violence case.
Well, gang crime is tough. And the reason why it's tough and why cases can go cold for periods of time is that people that live in communities where gangs thrive are afraid. They live in fear of those gang members. So they don't come out of the shadows and tell law enforcement what's happened, what they've seen, what they've heard. And sometimes it takes a bit of time for them to become courageous enough to do that. They need to understand, and I hope anybody that sees this, that is a witness to any crime, including gang crime, understands that there are resources and people out there looking out for them, that you don't need to hide in the shadows. You can come out so that cases can get solved, murders can get solved, and in a case like this, someone like Isabel Enriquez shouldn't have to wait that long to get justice. So it's a cycle of fear that a lot of witnesses live in, and we try to communicate to them that you don't have to live in that fear. Come and talk to us, and let's figure out what happened.
Absolutely. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. It's so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
But congratulations on your award.
Thank you.
Much deserved, that's for sure. All right, still ahead on San Diego People, we talk with another award recipient, Dayna Herroz, how a mother was able to take a sad situation into something that helps other victims. Stay with us. That story is coming up next. Welcome back to San Diego, people. We are talking to some of the award recipients of the Citizens of Courage Award. Dayna Herroz literally experienced a mother's worst nightmare in July 2006. She found out her daughter and 10-month-old grandson were brutally murdered in one of San Diego County's worst double homicide cases. She actually found out about it after a friend heard about it on the news. But through this tragedy, Dayna was able to get through it all, as well as be a source of support for other victims going through the same thing. So joining us today to talk about this, Dayna is, as well as Deputy DA Tracy Pryor. Thank you so much for being here. Dayna, I don't even know where to start. I can't imagine. You just shared with me this was your only child, yes. So your only grandson. Mm-hmm. And you heard about it on the news.
I saw it on the news the night before, but I didn't know it was my daughter and grandson.
So you were very close with your daughter. You talked to her a bunch of times a day. What had happened? You just didn't speak with her that night, and then you're watching the news?
She was meeting with the biological father to discuss child support, but he had no intention of discussing that. He came to her apartment and had already planned out the murders. So she was supposed to call me when she got home from dinner, but sometimes she would call me the following day.
Sure.
So I just thought that's when she would call.
They say a mother's instinct is always right. Did you have a funky feeling about this guy?
Oh, yes.
From the beginning?
Oh, yes. She went to school with him. Uh-huh. And he very smug, very arrogant. Not anyone that I would have wanted her to be with. And he wasn't, I never met him.
You never met him?
No. I met, I heard of him through my daughter, uh-huh. But he wasn't a fixture in her world. He wasn't even going to have to raise Dean. It was a matter of child support.
So even when your grandson was born, he wasn't at the hospital? He was just an absent father?
Yes, and he falsified 2 paternity tests to try and get it so that, it would say that, no, he's not the biological father, and hopefully she would stop. But we knew that we weren't going to stop, and that was, for us, we wanted her to go to court. We wanted her to do it the correct way, have the blood test, and call him out on being the father.
Sure.
He had no intention of that ever happening.
So working for the news, normally we don't get the names of the victims right away. So were you watching a story just about a young girl and her son? No names were announced?
No names.
Did it ever cross your mind?
No. I said a prayer for that family. Wow. And went to bed. And I thought, someone's going to wake up to that tomorrow, and how horrible. And so I said a prayer. Never in a million years thinking it was my daughter and my grandson.
Wow. So here we are about 10 years later.
Almost 10 years, yeah.
You've done so much in the meantime. You still wear the button. You said you wear that button every day. Mm-hmm. But you've written a book.
I'm a co-writer of the book.
Co-writer of the book. We have the book here. Let's hold it up so everyone can see it. And you've channeled this energy into something good because you want to help other people out there. How did you find that courage?
I knew that there was nothing out there for me at the time that it happened. I couldn't find anything. And I never wanted somebody to try and maneuver through the investigation or the criminal justice system by themselves, because it is so traumatic as it is, and you're not really working on all cylinders, and you don't understand how these things go. You don't know how long an investigation is, or how long it's going to take before you can bring this case to trial. Mm-hmm. When we knew, when we found out that it was them that was murdered, we knew immediately who did it.
Wow. And Tracy, kind of take us through it all, from when you get that call to how long it took to that day in court when you saw her weeping on the floor.
Sure. At that time, I was in a leadership role in a division where I would be then assigning this case to a prosecutor. And I remember before making that decision, reading the arrest warrants in the case and some of the factual evidence in the case, and just thinking, who does such a thing? Who could do such a thing? We learn about monsters and they're under our beds and they're in books, and no, this was truly a monster. Who could kill a mother and hang a baby from a crib. You know, it's really, it is unthinkable and unbelievable. So I assign it to one of our best and brightest, you know, prosecutors, and the reality of a situation like this is it was going to be a circumstantial evidence case where the prosecutor and the team of people working on the case would need to, you know, with diligence and dot every I, cross every T, you know, complete the investigation. And understandably, that took a long time, and Dayna was upset, and I remember talking with her and how understandably, you know, angry that makes one. Wait a minute, we know who did it, and you know, that type of thing. Why is it taking so long? And so there were a lot of conversations about, please be patient. I know this is hard to be patient, and there's no way we can even say we haven't walked a second in her shoes. But we tried. We even had a mediator of sorts come in and talk, because there was a little bit of tension there at the beginning, understandably, that why isn't somebody making an arrest in this case? And so that was a real kind of a journey that we all kind of got through together, you know, that it can't just happen immediately, and that's got to be so, you know, confusing for a victim of crime and a survivor. And I just never forget that moment when I said something to the effect of, you know, how are you doing? How are you doing? She said, I don't know what to do next. I said, there really is no kind of textbook or plan or, you know, right or wrong. So whatever you're doing to get by is good. Be forgiving to yourself. And she said, I'm gonna write that book someday. And sure enough, here we are 10 years later, and she was a co-contributor to this murder survivor handbook. And literally, it's being sold on Amazon. It went to #1, I think, the first day. We hand it out to survivors in our office now, and it's available almost as a manual for someone to take to court and be empowered.
Yeah.
And these are all the things that Dayna had to go through, kind of traipsing through the mud. But the fact that she is kind of using that to channel for others is truly remarkable.
Well, congratulations on the book. Congratulations on the award. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And we would like to congratulate all of the 2016 Citizens of Courage Award winners. Thank you so much for all that you have done for our communities. That's going to do it for this edition of San Diego People. Join us tonight for the KUSI News at 6, 10, and 11.